Turning Red is the latest animated film from Disney and Pixar. It stars Rosalie Chiang and Sandra Oh and is directed by Domee Shi. It hits Disney Plus exclusively on March 11, 2022. Before we get into this, don't forget to hit that like button down below. It does wonders in getting my content out there. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to keep up to date with all my content. Mei Lee is a confident, dorky 13-year-old torn between staying her overbearing mother's dutiful daughter and the chaos of adolescence. And as if changes to her interests, relationships, and body weren't enough, whenever she gets too excited, which is practically always, she poofs into a giant red panda. Okay, so yes, before we do get into this, this is another Pixar movie that is getting relegated directly to Disney Plus without a theatrical option. I see a lot of people asking this. Is it going to theaters? No, it's not. It's going directly to Disney Plus. No real reason has been given to this. I mean, we've kind of come out the back end of the pandemic now. Box office receipts are shooting back up. A few movies have broken all-time box office records in the last couple of months. The only real reason we can see behind this is that the last two Pixar movies, Soul and Luca, did very, very well viewership-wise on Disney Plus, and they really want to capitalize on that. Again, it's very, very disappointing that Pixar keeps getting the shaft, but that is an issue for another time. For now, let's talk about this movie right here, which is Turning Red. Turning Red is a Pixar movie unlike any that the studio has ever tackled before. This is a movie that kind of delves into slightly more mature territory. Most Pixar movies, of course, are kind of geared towards sort of a more younger viewer while appealing to the older viewers in the audience as well. But this movie sort of feels like it has more of a kind of targeted demographic, and that is towards, I guess, tweens or teenagers. This movie, as I'm sure you have seen kind of plastered across the internet over the last couple of days, is most certainly an allegory for puberty. This isn't something that Disney has really advertised heavily with this movie, but it is definitely the kind of the impetus behind this movie is to tell a story about puberty in the kind of this traditional Pixar stylized kind of fantasy way. More specifically, this is a movie that focuses on female puberty. It touches on all of the things that a young woman goes through at that time of her life when she's changing biologically, physically, mentally. All of these things, they're really kind of thrown out there and laid on the line. It's very obvious. But I've also heard a lot of people going like, is this movie a bit too much for the young kids? People are saying, my child is not old enough, my child doesn't know about these things yet, they're not ready to learn about these things yet. Is it okay to take my kid to see or watch this movie on Disney Plus? Yeah, totally. Like it's been done in such a wonderful way by Pixar that this is, it's so on the nose. I mean, if you know, you know, but it has been done in such a fantasized way that kids aren't gonna know what this movie is about. This movie really talks about these things, again, in a really fantasized way. It kind of talks about puberty in this really kind of mythical way where this young woman comes from a line of women in this family who have gone through this period in their life where they turn into this big red panda, and it's about kind of embracing that big red panda. Now that we know what this movie is about, we absolutely can understand what turning red infers in this instance. But yeah, for a kid, this is really just a body horror monster flick. And I say the term horror very, very lightly because there's nothing scary about this movie at all. Your kid will not be scared. This panda is so beautiful and big and fluffy and so wonderful. Just a really great character. But yeah, look, it's one of those things where when you watch as a kid and you love it and then you go back to it 20 years time and you go, I get what they're doing now, I understand this movie. So if you have any worries about taking a younger child to see this thing, don't worry at all, because it's just so whimsically Pixar that they will just see this as a movie about a young girl who turns into a big red panda. And I think that that is just the most beautiful thing that Pixar has done with this. I've seen other people saying this is so keyed towards like a female demographic. You're not going to understand this movie unless you're a female, you've gone through these things. I would totally disagree, because I think there's that universal truth behind puberty. Of course, there are things in here that I'm not going to personally relate to, but because I, of course, did go through the cycle of puberty all those years ago, there are universal truths that we can all relate to. The changes in our biology, our physiology, our mental states, and really that fight and challenge against authority. We all go through that. We go through that phase where we're like, I'm better than the adult in this situation, right? And you really want to fight back about, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that, you're too young, or you know, whatever else. But then it is also a story for the adults. I'm not at that phase in my life yet where I've had a child or anything, but, you know, one day I will be in that position where I have to then look after a child who is growing into, whether that be a woman or a man. And I think it really touches on that from a parent perspective as well, that the parents are going to get something out of, where they can look at it and, you know, maybe pull some of their own experience from it, or maybe learn a little bit about it. You know, this is a story about this young girl who's changing in so many different ways and is exploring herself and exploring her personality and this newfound personality that she has. She's finding all these new things that she likes, and whether that's like the new, you know, teenage pop band craze, or she's discovering that she really likes boys, or, you know, she wants to be out with her friends and partying and dressing a little bit differently and stuff like these. Again, these are all things that we can all relate to, and this movie does it in such a beautiful way. On a more technical level, this is a gorgeously looking movie. This is set in the 1990s. Totally my era. I'm a kid of the 90s. I say it almost every time I do one of these videos, but it's so beautiful. I love the kind of 90s aesthetics of it, whether that's the costume design, the locations. They've done this really, really beautifully. I love the pastel kind of colors that are involved. You know, the 90s was like soft blues and pinks and purples and greens and yellows and all that kind of stuff. And I just think they really got kind of the color palette down so beautifully on this movie. It's great, really soft pastel colors. They just look so nice. And the animation style here is really quite quirky. It's a little bit different than what we have come to expect from Pixar. I feel like it almost blends a little bit of kind of an anime style with a more traditional Western kind of Pixar style, where you do have a kind of like more rigid kind of movement in the animation, where a lot of anime stuff is, of course, limited animation, very, very limited animation. So they have pulled in these kinds of ideas of, you know, the frame rate's a little bit different, the movement is a little bit more jolty, but it just feels so nice. This is a really, really beautifully designed film. It looks great. I'm really impressed with this. Again, on the surface, doesn't look like a Pixar film, but when you get to the back end of it, you know, almost you feel like even this story doesn't feel like a Pixar film. When you get to that back end of it, you're like, this is totally Pixar. Pixar have kind of pushed. And this is something that I've been saying for a little while, is that I really want these studios to start pushing themselves. I got a lot of flack because when I reviewed Disney's Encanto a couple of months ago, I said I wasn't a huge fan of it. It's simply because it felt like so many of the other movies that they have been giving us for the last 10 years. And what I said is, I just want to see Disney and Pixar as well kind of pushing boundaries, doing something a little bit different. And this is totally different to anything else the company has ever done before, either Pixar or Disney. I think it's so wonderful. Again, the way they have crafted this movie is incredible. Domee Shi is an incredible storyteller. Of course, she was the director behind Pixar's wonderful short Bao, which released alongside The Incredibles 2, I believe. And that's one of my favorite Pixar shorts of all time. And Domee Shi really has just gone above and beyond with this movie and delivered something very, very, very special. And at that, I'll be giving Turning Red a 4 out of 5. Turning Red is a film unlike anything Pixar has tackled before. A beautiful ode to growing up, finding yourself, and going through puberty. Told through a female lens, it's nevertheless a universal story we can all relate to in our own special and messy ways. And a great monster comedy for the kids. It's yet another Pixar winner. Once again, Turning Red hits Disney Plus exclusively on March 11, 2022. Thanks again to the incredible team over at Disney and Disney Plus for providing me with an early screener ahead of the film's release for the purposes of this review. And thanks everybody out there for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy. Hey everyone, if you haven't yet, smash that big old subscribe button up on your screen to keep up to date with all my content, and hit that like button down below. Also, don't forget to check me out on social media, and please consider supporting me over on Patreon for as little as $1 a month for exclusive videos, early access content, and to get your name up on the screen. Thanks again for watching.